Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for a deep dive on building stronger relationships?
Absolutely. Always happy to dive into this stuff. It's so important.
Totally. So I came across this piece on self-improvement, and it really got me thinking about the practical stuff, the everyday things we can actually do.
Yeah, love that. Gets right to the point, no fluff.
Exactly. And the piece breaks down these five essential tips, almost like pillars for building those rock solid relationships. And the first one is all about open communication.
Makes sense, right? It's got to start with honesty, being open and vulnerable.
Right, like really putting yourself out there, even when
Yeah.
it feels a bit scary.
It can be scary for sure, but that's where trust comes in, right? When you feel safe enough to be yourself, to speak your mind.
Totally. And that ties into something this piece talks about, fostering understanding. Because when you're open and honest, it helps prevent those unnecessary misunderstandings and conflicts.
Huge. So many arguments could be avoided with just a little more openness up front.
Right. Like it reminds me of this one time I had this tiny little miscommunication with a friend. And instead of just, addressing it head on, I let it fester.
Uh-oh.
We've all been there. Oh, it was a whole thing. But
Mhm.
it made me realize how important it is to just be direct and communicate clearly from the get-go.
Communication is key, for sure. But it's not just about talking, right? It's also about really listening.
Yeah, active listening. That's the second pillar.
And it's a game changer because it's not just about hearing the words, it's about really tuning in, understanding the other person's perspective, their emotions, the whole nine yards.
It's funny. I used to think I was a great listener, but then I realized I was often just planning my response in my head.
Yeah. Guilty as charged.
Yeah.
Happens to the best of us. But active listening, it takes practice. It's about being present in that moment.
Totally. And it makes such a difference. Okay, so we've got open communication, active listening. What's next?
Well, the next pillar is all about showing appreciation. Big or small, it all matters.
Right, like those little gestures, the thank yous, the compliments.
Exactly. Everyone wants to feel valued and appreciated. When you take the time to express gratitude, it strengthens that bond, you
It's
know?
that feeling of belonging, right?
Yeah,
Like, hey, you're seen, you're appreciated.
exactly.
So important. Okay, now for a potentially trickier one. Pillar number 4, setting healthy boundaries.
Yeah, this one can be tough.
Because it's easy to feel like you're being difficult or selfish.
Right, especially in relationships where you really care about the other person.
Exactly. But this piece, it frames boundaries as a form of self-respect. And when you respect yourself, you're better equipped to respect others.
I like that. It's about knowing your limits and communicating them clearly and respectfully.
It's kind of like, I don't know, having a fence. It's not about keeping people out. It's about creating a safe space for everyone involved.
Love that analogy.
And it reminds me of this time, it's funny now, but back then, well, a friend was going through a tough time, and they kind of made me their therapist.
Oh, I've been there.
Right. And at first, I wanted to be supportive,
Mhm.
but it got to the point where it was draining.
Yeah,
I wasn't setting those boundaries.
totally. And you have to protect your own energy too. It's not selfish, it's necessary.
Exactly. Okay, ready for the final pillar?
Hit me with it.
Spending quality time together. Seems obvious, but it's so easy to let life get in the way.
It is, especially with how busy everyone is these days.
Totally. It's about being intentional, right? Like
Yeah.
carving out that time for those shared experiences.
And it doesn't have to be anything fancy. It could be as simple as cooking dinner together, going for a walk, or even just having a conversation, with no phones, just being present.
Exactly. It's those little moments that really matter, those moments of connection. So we've got our 5 pillars: open communication, active listening, showing appreciation, setting healthy boundaries, and quality time.
So much good stuff to unpack there.
Right. It's all about putting in the effort, making those relationships a priority.
It's a journey for sure, but it's so worth it.
Absolutely. So as you go about your week, think about these pillars. Which one resonates most with you right now? What's one small step you can take today to strengthen those connections that matter most?
What a great question to ponder.
Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. Until next time.
See you then.